Good morning. My name is Turner Bitten. I'm the Executive Director here at Westview Media. I'd like to welcome you to the next event in our Candid Candidates series. Today, we're joined by Matt Hymas, who is running for State School Board. Matt, I'd like to welcome you on camera.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me here. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. To let folks know who are watching live, if you submit questions through the live chat, I'll be sure to ask them of Matt. But to get started, Matt, why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, what do you do for work, that kind of thing.
Sure. Yeah. So again, my name is Matt Hymas. I work at a school. I'm an administrator at a school, at a high school. I grew up here in West Valley City. Lived in Magna for 20 years, and I currently live in Tooele County, but I'm excited to run for the State School Board of Education. My background, I'm in education. I graduated from the University of Utah with a mathematics teaching degree. I later on went and received a Master of Business Administration, and then after that, I received a Master of Arts with an emphasis in educational leadership, and I got that one from Central Michigan University. I taught in the classroom for 4 years. I'm currently an administrator and have been for the past 6 years. I'm in my 7th year now. And so I love education. I love teaching kids. I love working with families and communities and just helping that process. So.
Thank you. So what is, in your opinion, what's the most important role that the state school board plays?
Well, there's several important roles. If I'm, we understand that, but it's to work with communities, work with the needs that we see at the districts, at the schools. We want to. There's regulations, and I hope to cut back on those. And there's policy making and things like that has to come on the state level. But I think the important role is to really work with communities, with local professionals, to find out what the needs of those communities, those schools are, and then to help them get there, right? The school board, I don't see it as this thing on a platform, right? And everybody works for them. I really want to work for the people, right? And so I think that's very important, is that the communication between school board members and those within its district.
Thank you. What was there a particular moment or anything that kind of spurred you to run? What made you decide to jump in and run for state school board?
Well, I've been in like I said, education for over a decade, and so I've kind of seen how things go. And I think for the most part, we see some good things. There's always, I think everybody would say, well, there's some things that we can work on. One of the things about me is I love to learn. You can tell by 2 master's degrees and a bachelor's degree. I love learning. And so when this opportunity was open, I jumped on it, and I thought I want to not only help others learn processes, but really help kids love to learn. So for me, it's all about the kids, helping them, strengthening their futures, getting them ready to be good citizens, and just contributing to society. And this is a great opportunity for an individual such as myself to jump in this category of the state school board and really help out.
Thank you. This is the first year that the school board is having partisan elections. So I was just wondering if you would share what your experience has been like and how your campaign has been so far.
Well, that's a good question. Campaigning is, I don't know if I'm cut out for campaigning. I love to work. I like to get to work and just do the job. Campaigning is a little bit different. I've never been through this process before, so campaigning is new for me. Understanding some of the, not hoops that you have, but just some of the different experiences that you have. It's all been new. Even down to like putting up signs. you really put yourself out there. It's quite a humbling experience because for me, I've lived my life. I've coached, I've taught in the classroom, but I've been somewhat personal. And so when you campaign, you really put yourself out there. Now when this opened up for partisan, it is interesting because the state school board, I don't know if it should matter what party you come from. I really don't know if that should have a factor in education. What I do believe it does, though, is it kind of helps people align values, right? So just by the party that you run for, you might gain a little bit of insight from the individual running, right? And I'm not saying that's good or bad. I mean, I know I chose the Republican Party, and I value its beliefs and the values that are with the Republican Party, and some people don't. And I hope that doesn't just automatically get me a vote or not get me a vote, but I hope it does inspire people to look more into it and say, okay, what is this guy really about? I see that he's got an R by his name, but that's not what we should vote for, right? We should look more into it and say, what is this guy really about?
Thank you. So I want to follow up on something you said. I think you're the first person that I've talked with that has coached something, which is a unique background and a unique perspective. And just wondering what you coached and if you feel like it's made you a better member of a team and kind of given you different skills or background.
Absolutely. I've coached basketball for over 20 years. I started coaching just after high school. I was an assistant coach for the Taylorsville High School girls basketball team. And it was a wonderful experience. I've coached my kids in recreational basketball and of course other kids. I've coached at the junior high level. I've coached at the high school level. Currently, I'm coaching baseball. I'm in my baseball season at the high school level here where I work, and it's been fantastic. I love team sports, and it really does open my eyes to work with other members. Especially, I look at the board. There's 15 members on this board here, and I have the experience and knowledge to know how to work with a team that brings us together. I have had championship teams, but they're young in junior jazz. I'm still working for it on the high school level. We're hopeful, but I think we can put together something. I think that on the state school board, we can have a championship level team on that board. But yeah, I think it's been helpful. I think it gives me an edge of working with people, understanding character, all of us having the same goal and working towards that goal, and just coming together on common ground, not only with the members of the board, but with communities, right? I mean, I understand that on a team, not only is it give and take, you have to learn about each other's strengths and weaknesses, and you support people through those weaknesses, and you support people's strengths, but also you have to know where people go on a team, right? Especially in basketball, just because, I mean, I'm 6'5", I played center, but I'm a pretty decent shooter as well. So just because if somebody's has a superficial view to them, doesn't mean that's where they belong. You really got to get to know people and say, okay, where's the best place on this team for you that can drive success? Thank
you. I'm going to give you a break for a second because I've asked a bunch in pretty rapid succession, and remind folks that are watching live that if you have questions for Matt, please put them in the Facebook chat here, and I'll be sure to ask them. To follow up on one of the themes that you've talked about repeatedly, you've mentioned working with communities quite a bit. And your district covers multiple counties. It's a very large district and multiple different, I would just say it's a very diverse district. Just wonder if you would expand on what working with communities would look like for you and kind of what your style is like.
Well, as for my style, I am quite transparent. oftentimes I might say a little too much, but I want people to know what's happening, especially when it involves them. I don't want secrets, right? I want people to say, okay, Matt's on the board. Here's what he's going to do for us. Now, as far as working with communities, I want to visit. I want to go. I love a face-to-face. This Zoom stuff, it's challenging. Phone calls, I'd rather just go visit with you. Now, I understand we're in a situation right now. Hopefully that doesn't last forever, right? Or even much longer. But I want to get out and do what I can. I'll bring a mask. I'll wear a mask. I'll do my part. I'll socially distance. But I want to see how the schools are working. I want to visit with local professionals. I want to visit with families, maybe through the PTA or otherwise, and hear needs or concerns. I want to hear successes and celebrating those successes. As far as, like I said, communicating, I've put my cell phone number out there. I'm always open to a good text or phone call. My email is out there. I'm happy to post that out there. You can find me on Facebook. Just it shouldn't be too hard. And I'm trying to make myself available. I will do what I can, like I said, to go out and visit and just be there to listen and help.
Thank you. So the next thing I'm going to move on to is the campaign, and specifically to get into a couple of the issues. But before I do that, I'd like to ask you what you think the biggest issue is in your particular race.
Biggest issue in my race, or okay, well,
or at the school board.
At the school board, well, let me talk to you about there's a few, right? There's a few big issues. I'm going to talk to one that's a little more personal to me, as I've been trying to fill staffing needs. I've noticed that there's a teacher shortage out there, and not only is there a teacher shortage, but teachers want to be valued, and sometimes that looks like compensation, and sometimes it looks like recognition. But I think there's a huge problem out there, and that is that we need people who want to teach our kids, but we overwork them, right? We overregulate them, and we put a lot on their plate and then say, oh, you're just a teacher. It doesn't work like that. We value our teachers. I value teachers. I want them to know the important work that they do. And so that's one of the issues that needs to be addressed on the board, is how do we get not only good qualified people in our classrooms, but how do we keep them there? How do we retain them? That's one of them. Another big issue I think is funding. I think we have some restrictions on our funding. We are leaving hundreds of thousands of dollars out of the classroom because of these regulations that are either unrealistic or not able to get met by certain schools. And so we're saying, well, the state has this much budget, but we're not really getting that to our kids. I think there's some inequity in funding and some real issues that I'd like to sit down with those 14 other members and discuss.
Thank you. On the topic of regulations, you've mentioned it a couple of times, and for folks that are watching that maybe don't know how school administration works and kind of that process, are there specific examples you can give, or could you maybe walk us through a scenario of one of these, an example of one of these regulations?
Well, I don't know how specific I can get for you, but I can tell you that the schools are allocated X amount of dollars, and you have to do certain things to get those dollars, right? And that could be for a variety of topics within the school. And what's happening is if you don't meet all those requirements, then you don't get all that money, right? I can tell you, I'm working on a gifted and talented grant right now. It's not a huge amount of money, but there's a bunch of questions and hoops that you have to jump through in order to get this money. Now, I'm not saying that we just throw money out to schools. I think that there needs to be some regulations, but I think that they need to be looked at. It's getting to a point where it's almost ridiculous, some of the regulations that are put on there, that some schools, quite frankly, would say, I can't do this, or I'm out of time, and we're losing out on that. I think technology is a big one as well. There's grants out there that we can get to supplement some of that funding, right? But there's a lot of hoops to jump through to get to that money. And I just like to make it a little bit easier for schools who have already proven that they're functioning to get that money and use that money for their kids.
Thank you. A friend of mine teaches at a rural junior high school and talks constantly about capacity and having to write grants and all these different things that just make the work of education a very difficult thing. So I appreciate your response on that.
Yeah, it's sorry, I'm going to jump back in. I mean, that's just one of those things that I feel for teachers, right? He shouldn't have to do that. I graduated from the U ready to go into the classroom and teach. And I was shocked on how ill prepared I was. Not anything from the University of Utah. I think they have a great education system and program. But just to get in the classroom and realize all of the additional things that need to be done in order to maintain compliance was just kind of shocking. Yeah. So I can relate to your friend there.
It's something that we hear from teachers all the time, and it's been a recurring theme that's come up on all the conversations we've had about schools. To shift gears just slightly, wondered if you just, since you are in administration at a school, if you'd share your experience with COVID and kind of how you've navigated that or how you've seen teachers navigating that. We don't have to get into specifics, but just maybe if you'd share your experience a little bit.
Yeah, COVID. Oh my.
Wild West.
what a nightmare, right? You know, I think we can all agree that things could have and should have been handled a little bit differently. And the situation that we're in, you know, we have teachers in schools who are working online to help students who don't come to school, who can't come to school. We have teachers working still in the classroom, putting their health at risk to get in the classroom and teach kids. And we have teachers doing both, working online and on campus schooling. And it's taxing. It's taxing on these teachers. But man, I gotta give a shout out to them. They are killing it. They're doing such an amazing job with the stress. And I talk to teachers daily, and they are stressed. And they try to play it off like we all do, right? We all want to just say, you know what, things are going great. And sometimes they are. But we're in a pandemic. Not a whole lot is going great. But I really, like I said, I have to give it to these teachers, hand it to these teachers who have really put on a happy face for their kids. And they know it's about the kids. And they're like I said, they're risking their health for these kids. And the kids are risking their health and families. But it just shows us how important education is, right? I can't take a break from education. I can't say, okay, I'm going to skip an entire year. Well, if I'm a 11th grader, I can't take my 12th grade year off and then do it later. Life happens, right? And so these teachers coming in and us dealing with this, it has not been easy, but like I said, our teachers have just been so great, so pleasant to work with, so positive, and just really had a great attitude of helping the kids and understanding the value of education.
Thank you. I'll give you another break really quick and remind folks who are watching live that if you have questions for Matt, please submit them in the chat, and I'll be sure to ask them. The next question I'd like to move on to kind of dovetails with the COVID situation, and this is that we've kind of rapidly moved more into online spaces, especially at schools, and just wondering if you'd share experience with that and kind of how you view online and that component of education that's happening right now.
Okay, online. I mean, online has been around for a while. You know, that's no secret. And those schools who have been doing online, they definitely have the advantage. For schools like mine and those within our district, I think we're getting there, but I don't feel like it's as strong as those who are in the classroom. There's something about, and you can call me old fashioned, but there's something about sitting at a desk learning. And I've taken online. I had to do, so I have my degree from Central Michigan University. I had to do that online. I did not commute. So I've experienced a small portion of it, right? I don't want to say that that it's the same as this, but I've experienced a small portion of that. Like I said, there's something about a brick and mortar building. There's something about standing in front of a teacher and learning and regurgitating that information. As a teacher, it's much easier. It was much easier for me to stand in front of a class, to see expressions on all of their faces, to check engagement, to check content knowledge. So I think we are suffering a bit during this COVID with the online functions. Another major problem with the online option is that our resources are limited. I mean, I got to hand it to Granite School. They did well at getting mobile hotspots out in the communities. I've seen a commercial, I was watching the NBA playoffs last night, saw a commercial where some phone companies are getting free internet out. So I really see communities coming together saying, we have to continue with educating our kids. We want to provide this for them. And it's going to help, but it's not going to be, in my opinion, it's not going to be as good as that classic brick and mortar.
I definitely agree. You said at the beginning that you prefer an in-person, and I'm definitely the same way. I'm very much missing the body language and all that you get from in-person. To shift gears just a little bit, one of the responsibilities of the state school board is selecting the state superintendent. And just wondering, you mentioned earlier that you're involved, it sounds like, in the hiring process and selecting teachers. I'm just wondering, not to speak specifically about any particular position, but what's kind of your approach to hiring, and how do you, if you were in a position of selecting the superintendent, how would you go about doing so? And kind of how do you view that process?
Okay. Well, that feels like a loaded question. Is that?
I'm not privy to any information. It's not coming from anywhere. It's a standard question I've asked all the candidates running for school board, because it is one of their responsibilities.
You're great. No, first off, I really appreciate our state superintendent right now. I think that Sydney Dixon is great, and that was a good hire. Of course, when you sit down to hire somebody, you sit with the team and you look at the needs of the job, of course, but you also have to look at social needs as well. I have to look at that individual and know that I can trust that individual, right? Especially as something as big as the state superintendent. I have to know that they have my children's best interest in mind, right? And when I say my children, I speak to those I represent as well. And so it's going to be questions that I ask are going to be based along those lines, right? I mean, I'm sure everybody that applies are great people, and there's a spot for them somewhere. And it kind of goes back to that team, right? You don't just pick a team captain because they played for X amount of years, or any other. Sorry, I'm choking here, but you don't just pick somebody because of superficial things. You have to dig deep, and something as important as a state superintendent, again, you have to know that they have their best excuse me, their best interest is for the students, for the education of Utah. And so again, as I'm hiring somebody, that's what I look at in my own school. If I'm hiring a math teacher, I need somebody who's, one, competent at math, two, can have a presence in the room, right? I can't have somebody that will just be eaten alive by 30 kids. It wouldn't be fair to the teacher, and it wouldn't be fair to the kids, and it wouldn't be fair to the families. And three, I need to find somebody who wants to be there, right? I've sat in interviews, they've applied for a position, and I've kind of got the impression that, you know what, I don't think they're going to like this. And so I share with them what our school is about, what our program is about, and then let them decide. And so again, it's that transparency. I'm open and honest. I don't want to trick anybody into doing something they don't want to do. So again, it goes back to that state superintendent. We want to be honest. This is a heavy load, right? They should know that coming in, but we need to look for those values that they have, those characteristics that they have, and make sure that they can align with what the state needs.
Thank you. And I to be fully transparent, this question came from an audience member for the local school board, because Salt Lake City School Board will be selecting a new superintendent. We currently have an interim one, but it is applicable to the state school board too. So I wanted to just make sure.
Sure. You're great. If I harass you too much, let me know, okay?
It's okay. Well, turning kind of back toward the campaign a little bit, wondering if you would share how folks can contact you. What is your website? I know you mentioned earlier your Facebook page, but just wondering if you could tell folks specifically how to get in touch with you, whether your website or whatever you choose.
Well, perfect. I don't have a website. I know it's unfortunate. I should have one. I get it. I don't have a website, but you can contact me. You can text me at 801-440-9145, or you could call. You could email me at mwhymas@gmail.com, or you could look me up on Facebook. I'm at Matt Hymas for State School Board. So those are three ways right now that you can contact me, and I'd be happy to talk to you.
Thank you. I'll make sure that we include those with the recording when it's published, and I'll include it here in the chat as well. I'm out of questions, so I'd like to prompt the audience one final time. If you have a question that you've been sitting on, please get those submitted, and I'll make sure that I ask them. But the last question that I like to ask candidates is, was there a question I should have asked or an issue that I should have brought up that I didn't today?
Turner, I think you did a great job. I really do. But let me just, I don't know if there's time for a closing
absolutely
statement here, but I want individuals to know that I want to do what's best for their kids. I really am in this to help their kids be educated, to grow into good citizens of their communities. We all want we all want for our kids a little better than what we had, sometimes a lot better, right? And so that's my hope, is to just continue to improve education, to get us on a track where families are comfortable, kids are enjoying learning, and we can come out of this on top. For some of my priorities, as I'm going into this, I really want to serve the diverse educational needs of families. I understand that each family is different. And not only is each family different, but each child within that family is different. I know that I can't just throw you a cookie cutter school and say, good luck, right? That's how it was when I was a kid. I didn't have a whole lot of options, but there are options out there now. There's plenty of options. And we want to make sure that families can explore those options. The other thing I want to do is I want to empower local professionals who best understand the needs of their students, right? Too many times we tell teachers what to do, or tell principals or districts what to do, when in reality, we should be hearing from them. They're in the trenches, right? They have the good ideas, and we need to accept those. We need to hear those. And then we can talk as a board and say, okay, here's the needs. Here's what we need to do. Now, realistically, I can't take every call that I take. I can't get on the board and say, okay, yeah, we're going to do that, right? I mean, it's just not realistic. But we can look at the general need, especially within the community, and say, yeah, let's do that. That's going to be huge for our kids. So that's what I want to do, is I want to empower those local professionals. They know what's going on. I want to find the most effective testing methods. I think that our tests right now, we're in a rough place. And so I want to explore more testing methods. I think that tests are important. I think that the information that we can glean from those tests can really help us. The problem is I don't think that we're getting the feedback that we need in order to make changes that are actually helpful. And so that's part of that as well, is not only finding effective testing methods or effective tests, but offering feedback that is helpful, right? We want to make sure that feedback does something for us. It's not just feedback. Anyway, I hope to get the vote. I hope that you can vote for Matt Hymas for state school board. I'd love to represent communities and help where I can. But Turner, it's been a pleasure meeting with you here, and hopefully the viewers, I don't get to see them. I just get to see your wonderful beard, and I appreciate your time and efforts here.
Well, thank you. And I've appreciated our time as well. For folks that are watching live, this is being recorded, and we'll be sure to get the edited and recorded version up shortly. I'll also make sure that I link to Matt's Facebook page and provide that contact information. But just want to thank you, Matt, for the time you spent with us this morning.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Again, anytime, reach out, feel free, and I'll be answering questions whenever I can.
All right. Thank you, and good luck in November.
Thank you. All right.